Hey guys, so a while ago I created a chatbot with PyTorch, but this was only running in the terminal. And now today I want to build a graphical user interface for that. So we are going to build a nice little chat application using Python and Tkinter. So first of all, let me show you the final app first. So this is how our chat application will look like. So here we have a little window where the text will be displayed. Then down here we can put in the text and we can click on send or just hit enter. And you see the text is displayed there, and we also get the response from the chatbot immediately. So here we say hi and we get hi there, what can I do for you? And then for example, in this example, this is a chatbot for an online store. So for example, we can ask, what do you sell? And we get a response again. We sell coffee and tea. So let's say buy, and then we get have a nice day. So yeah, this is working, and now this is what we're going to implement, and yeah, let's do this. First of all, let me show you how to set up the project. So I will link the tutorial where I implement the chatbot in the description. So if you're interested in deep learning and natural language processing, then go ahead and check that out. But you don't have to go through all of this again. The code is also available on GitHub. So here you find the code and also a short installation guide. So let's go over this briefly. And by the way, if you enjoy this video, please hit like and consider subscribing. This really helps me a lot. Alright, so here I recommend to first create a virtual environment and then activate it. And then you have to install PyTorch. So for this, I also have an installation guide that you can check out. And then we also need NLTK. So this is a great library for natural language processing. And you also have to say nltk.download. So this is a package that is required for tokenization. And once you have all of this, then you can go ahead, and the first thing you want to do is to say python train.py. So this will train our chatbot and dump the model to this file. And once you have that, so in this example, I called python chat.py. So this started the chat in the terminal. So in this tutorial, we're going to change this, and then we can use a graphical user interface. And what's important here, so is the intents.json file. With this, you can customize it. So go ahead and clone this repository and follow these installations, and then you should be ready to go. All right, so here I'm in the editor, and now let's again briefly go over the different files in here. So the NLTK utils is just a helper function for some natural language processing techniques. Then in the model.py, we have the deep learning model implemented with PyTorch. And then the training file. So here we put everything together and train our model. And then it dumps the model into this file, data.pth. So here I already have done this, and now we have our model here, and then we can execute the chat.py function. So in this file, I load the trained model, and then here I simply have a while true loop where I get the user input and then detect the prediction or the response and return it. So we can actually try this out in a second. But then also what's very important here is this intents.json. So this is needed for our chatbot to train it. So in here you define different tags, for example, the tag greeting, and then different patterns. So different greetings, for example, hi, hey, how are you? And then you also define different responses. And whenever our chatbot classifies a sentence as a greeting, then it will select a random choice from these responses. So you can go ahead and customize this file for your own application. And remember, once you've done this, you also want to execute Python train.py to train the model again. And now, so I have already done this, and I'm also in a virtual environment where I have PyTorch and NLTK installed. So let me quickly check the chat.py if this is working correctly. And this starts the chat in the terminal, so I can say hi, and our bot returns with hey and a smiley face. And then I can, for example, ask, what do you sell? And let's see, we have coffee and tea. So in this example, our bot is set up for example, for an online store. So for example, you can ask what they sell, what items they have. You can also ask for the payment method or for the delivery options. So for example, if I ask, can I pay cash? Then we accept most major credit cards and PayPal. So yeah, let's quit this again and let's actually change this to use a graphical user interface. All right, so the first thing we have to change a little bit is the chat.py file. So in here, as I said, we do a while true loop where we get the input from the user. And then we do our prediction and we print the response. So we want to change this and define a function that gets a message as parameter and then returns the response. So let's do this here. So we define a function getResponse and it gets a message. And then we want to copy all of this. So we don't need this anymore where we get the input from the user. So we simply want to copy all of this and put it in here. And in the very beginning, of course, we have to change this. So our sentence equals tokenize the input message like so. And we can remove this while true loop. And then here, instead of printing this, we return this as our string. And I also don't want to put the bot name here in the beginning, so this should be taken care of by our application later. So we simply say return and then a random choice from our intents or from our responses. So this is already in a string format, so this is fine. And then at the very end, otherwise, or we can also put this at the very end, if we don't find a correct intent, then we simply return as a string, return, I do not understand. So here a slight typo, return. So yeah, this is all that we need to change in the chat.py file. And now we create a new file. So let's call this app.py. And here we create our graphical user interface using Tkinter. So we say from Tkinter import star in this case. So this will just import everything. This is maybe not the cleanest way of doing it, but it's fine in this example. So let's do it like this. And then we say from chat, so from this file, we want to import the newly created get underscore response function. And we also want to import the bot name. So this is defined somewhere in here as well. So in this case, bot name equals Sam. So then we have it here, and then I define some colors first. So let me actually just copy and paste this. So here I have a gray color and a dark blue background color and a almost white color for the text. And then we also define some fonts that we are going to use. So as font, if we define this for Tkinter, we can simply use this as a string and define, for example, our normal font as Helvetica and then size 14. And I also define a bold font like so. And now we can create our application. So for this, we create a class, and let's call this chat application. And in here, of course, we need an init. So the init gets self. And here we define a window. So we say self.window equals tk. So this is just the top level widget of Tkinter that we need. And then we create a helper function. So we say self._ set up the main window. So we have to create this function in a second, and this was where we create the layout. And then let's create this helper function, set up main window. So down here we create another function, define set up main window. And it gets self as well. And here we say self.window.title, and we give it the title chat, for example. Then we say self.window.resizable, and here we say width equals false and also height equals false. So we don't want our window to be resizable. And then we say self.window.configure. So this is how we give our widgets different attributes in Tkinter with this configure method. And this can take several keyword arguments. For example, here we can say width equals, width equals, let's say 417, and height equals, let's say 550. And we say BG for background. And here we give it the background underscore color that we defined. So this is all that we do for the start. And now in order to run up our application, we define a function, define run, which gets self as well. And here we simply say self.window and then main loop. So this is what we must call in Tkinter to start our application. So then down here we say if name equals main, then we create our app. So we say app equals chat application, and then we say app.run. So for now, let's save this and let's run this file, python app.py, and see if this works. So yeah, here we have our chat window with our background in a dark blue, and we also see the title chat. So this is working. So let's stop this again and continue with this. So now we go ahead and define our layout in the setup main window function. So first I want to create a little head label. So let's say head label equals, and this is a label widget from Tkinter. So remember I just said from Tkinter import star at the beginning. That's why I can directly access this here. So our label has to have a top or a parent widget. So for the parent widget, here we simply say self.window. And we also give it different attributes. For example, we say our background equals the background color. And for the foreground, we say we want the text color. Then we give it a little bit of text. So we say text equals welcome. And let's also set the font. So the font equals the, what did we define? Font, let's use font bold here. And I also say padding Y or pad Y equals 10 to move it down a little bit. So this is our head label. And after we created this, we have to say head label dot place. And then here in this example, I used the relative width argument. and this must be between 0 and 1. So in this case, I just say 1. So this label should take the whole width of our application of this parent window, which is just the whole window in this case. Then let's use a tiny divider. So in here, let's call this line, and this is a label as well. And the parent widget again is the self.window. And here let's do it a little bit different. So we say the width argument equals, let's say, 550 only. So we have a little bit of spacing because the whole app is 570 pixels wide. And then also we want to set the background as background gray here. And then again we have to say line.place, and again we use the relative width equals 1. Then we use the relative y, so the position of the y, and here we say 0.07, and we also want to set the relative height, and in this case let's use 0.012. So later when it comes everything together, you see where this is going to be placed. So then let's create our text widget. So this is a little area where we display the text. So here we create this as self dot variable. So here we say self dot and call this text widget equals. And in this case, we use a text widget. This is also available in Tkinter. And again, we have to define a parent widget. So we use self.window. Then let's say the width equals 20 and the height equals 2. And then the background equals BG color. And we also want to set the foreground equals the text color. Sorry, foreground only once. And let's also set the font equals the normal font. Then let's also say padding X equals 5 and padding Y equals 5 as well. So what this does is this will, for every text that we put into this, we display 20 characters in one line, and we use 2 lines for this. And then we give it a little bit of padding around so that it don't starts at the very beginning. So now we have this. And by the way, here I store it in a class variable because we are going to need this in another function later. But for example, we don't need this for the head label or this divider line. So that's why we don't say self dot our variable here. All right, so now we have our self.text widget. So now again, we have to place it. So we say place, and here let's use relative height. And then here I use 0.745, and the relative width equals 1, and the relative y equals, let's say, 0.08 here. So this means this takes a huge chunk of the whole application. So almost 75% of the space is used for this widget. And again, we use the whole width. And then we also want to give it some more arguments. So we can do this again with the configure method like here. So we say self.textWidget.configure. And here I want to config the cursor when we hover over this widget. So we say cursor equals arrow, so a little arrow. And then we say in the beginning the state equals disabled. This is also a constant defined in the Tkinter library. So for now, let's run this and see if we actually see something to see how this looks. All right, so here we see the application window. So we have our head label. Then we have a tiny divider, and then we have our text widget, which takes about 75% of the whole window. And whenever we hover over this, we just see the normal arrow cursor. And we disabled this, so otherwise we would be able to click in here and then set in text for ourselves. So we don't want to do this. We only want to do this when we put in something in the chat area. And now what we have to do is here down here, now we want to add an area where we add text and then also a button where we can click on send. So let's do this. So let's go ahead and so now the next thing I want to do is I also want to add a little scroll bar. So a scroll bar, and then we can scroll up and down on the side. So we say scroll bar equals, and this is a scroll bar widget. And now here we want to be careful, so this doesn't get self.window as the parent widget, but instead here the parent widget is self.text widget. And now all the next attributes that we give it will be relative to this parent widget. So now we say scroll bar dot place, and we want to say here, let's use relative height equals, and here we say 1. So we take the whole height of the same text widget. So that's why we use relative width, and we say relative x equals 0.974, so almost at the right of this window, but with a slight space in between. And then we say scroll bar again dot configure, and here we give it a command, otherwise it won't work. So we have to say command equals self.textWidget.yView. So this means whenever we change this scroll bar, then it will change the Y position of this text widget. So this basically means we can scroll up and down with this. Then after this, I add a little bottom, let's call this bottom label. And this is a little bit different than the head label. So we actually are going to use this as a background for the bottom area. So we say, let's say bottom underscore label, and here again this is a label, and now again as a parent widget, so here again we use self.window, then we say bg equals bg gray, and the height equals, and let's say 80 here. Then we say bottom label dot place again, and we want to say the relative width equals 1 in this case, and the relative Y position equals, let's use 0.825. And then we have the whole background filled with this. So again, let's stop here and run this and have a look at the chat application again. So there we have it. So we have the scroll bar, and right now we don't have text in it, so we can't scroll up and down, but you will see this later. And then here at the bottom, we have this new label that we just use as a background. So yeah, this is working. All right, now we need a message entry box, so a box where we can put in text that we want to write. So we say self.message, let's call this message entry equals, and this is an entry widget that we get from Tkinter. And here as the parent, now we actually use this bottom label as the parent widget. So we say bottom label here. And then as a background, so let's use a slightly different color here. So I just copy and paste this in here. And then as foreground, again, we use the text color. And as the font, we use the font. And then again, we want to place this. So we say self.messageEntry.place. And here we say the relative width equals, let's use 0.74 here. And the relative height equals 0.06, the relative y equals 0.008, and the relative x position equals 0.011. And then we also say self.messageEntry.focus. So whenever we start the application, this is already in focus, so this widget is selected and we can start typing. And then we also want to do a nice little thing, so whenever we hit enter, then we also want to be able to send the text. So we say self.messageEntry, and then we say .bind, and we want to bind the return command. So you have to do it like this, and then we bind it to a function that we call self.onEnterPressed. And now, of course, we have to define this. So down here, let's define this. So define onEnterPressed, and this gets self, but this also gets another event, another argument that is called event. So it has to have this, otherwise it won't work, because when we bind this to this entry, and then this function will be called, and it will be called with an event argument. So let's do it like this. And now when we do this, we say the message equals self.messageEntry.get. So this will get the input text as a string. And then later we continue with this. So now we want to insert this in the text area. So for this, let's actually define another function, and let's call this _insert. Let's call this insert message, and it gets self, and it gets the message, and it gets the sender. And then in here, what we do is first we say if not message, then we simply return. For example, this might happen if we hit enter without actually putting text in it. So then we do it like this. And otherwise, then we want to delete the text from this entry box. So we say self.messageEntry.delete. And then here we have to define the start and the end. So we can simply use this end constant from Tkinter. And then we define the actual message that we want to display. So we say message1 equals, and then here we use an f string. And first we put in the sender like so, then a colon, and then a space, and then we put in the message like this. So this is what we want to display. So then we put this in our, how did we call it? Self.text widget area. So we can do it like this. So we can say self.text widget.insert. And now we want to insert it at the end, and we want to insert the message1. So now if we just do it like this, then it won't work. And the reason for this is that up here we disabled the text widget. So here for a moment we have to enable it. So we say configure state equals normal, and we don't need this here. And then again, we disable it again. So after we inserted the message, we again say the field is disabled. So now we have this, and of course here we have to call it. So we say self._insert message, and we put in the message, and as sender we say you. So this will be displayed in the text area later. And now actually we can start testing this already. So now we can hopefully type in text, so hello, and now if I press enter, then you see this worked. So here the text got deleted, and up here we see you and then the message. So now the next thing that should happen is we want to see the response from our chatbot. And what's also missing is here I want to place a send button, so let's do this. So now first let's do the last missing widget here, so the send button. So here let's create a send button variable, and this is a button widget. And as parent, again here we want to use the bottom label. And as a text we want to say the text equals send. Then let's also give it a font. So we say font equals font bold, not as a string, but as a variable. Then let's give it a width. So we say width equals 20, and the background for this equals, again, background gray. And now we have to connect this button to, again, a function that will then insert the message. So for this we could use simply the onEnter pressed method. This will do the same thing, but remember this needs the event argument. But we can simply do it like this. So here we can say the command equals, and now here I use a lambda function, so lambda : and then self dot on enter pressed, and as a event we simply say none. And then we do it like this, and then of course we also have to place the button, so we say send button dot place, and then let's use different arguments. For example, as relative x we say 0.77, relative y equals 0.008, and let's also use relative height equals 0.06, and relative width equals 0.22. So like this. So this is the whole code that we need for our widget. And now let's test the button. So again, let's run the code python app.py. And then we see we have the send button here. So first let's test it with enter, and now let's do another one, and now we click on send and we see it's working, but we missed to insert a new line. So let's do this as well. So in the code here, when we create the message, we can simply at the end use a \n, and let's use another one actually to use 2 empty lines. So now we have it like this. And now here, now what we want to do is we also want to get the response from the chatbot and display this as well. So for this, let's actually copy and paste this. So this is pretty simple because we already have everything that we need for this. So here we say message, let's call this message 2. And here as the sender, we want to use the bot name that we imported. And as the message, we want to call the getResponse function. And here we put in the message as argument. And be careful here, so we want the raw message from the beginning, not the message one here with the sender. All right, so now we have this, and now we do one more thing. So now after this, we say self.textWidget.see end. This just means that it will scroll to the end, and we are always able to see the last message. So yeah, that's everything that we need. So now again, let's test this out. All right, so here we have it. So I say hi, and sorry, here I get the same one, and I know why this happened. So here, when I insert the second message, here I actually have to say message 2, of course. So now try this again. All right, so now let's say hi, and we immediately get the response from Sam. So it also says, hello, thanks for visiting. Then let's ask, what do you sell? And we see we sell coffee and tea. So can I pay with PayPal? Question mark. We accept most major credit cards and PayPal. Awesome. Then let's say thanks. Anytime, and let's also say bye, and we get bye, come back again soon. So yeah, this is working, and now you can play around with this for yourself. And again, if you want to train your own chatbot, then modify the intents.json and train your model again. And yeah, I hope you really enjoy this, and then see you in the next tutorial. Bye.